there was a group of women who conferred together to make a woman's commentary on the Bible. They felt that the Bible had been used to undergird and uphold most of the laws that were unjust to women, and they decided to use the scholarship, which was coming out of Germany, to really examine what the Bible actually said, even though most of them felt that it was not a book with much authority. These were American women. This was the 1890s. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Olympia Brown, and many others. Women who were Bible scholars, women who were just rabble-rousers, social activists. If you look at the Woman's Bible, which is free online, by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, you'll see the very first pages talk about the book of Genesis. And they talk about the two different creation stories, which are in the book of Genesis at the beginning. And they talk about the passage that says, "And God said to God's self," as if there were more than one, as if they were conferring, "Let us make humanity in our image, male and female, they created them." So, they said, it's right there at the very beginning, if humans are made in God's image and half of them are male and half of them are female, then God is both. It's obvious. And that femaleness is equal to maleness. So what gives with all these laws about women not being able to own property and there being no divorce and women not even having custody of their own children, and you guys teaching that women can't speak in public and can't do anything but rule queenly over their household? This is poppycock. So, just using a word from the 1890s. I hope. This would cause conversation in any Sunday school class in Texas now. Don't you think? Yeah. And so these women were doing this and published it, 1898. They were fearless. Or if they had fear, they covered it up really well. And they supported each other as they did this dangerous and controversial work. And this was not the only thing that they had done. This was long after they had already done many other outrageous things. I'm going to talk to you about Susan B. Anthony probably every couple years. Her birthday is February 15th. And so this being the day after her birthday, I just want you all to know about her. She is one of the saints in the Unitarian pantheon. So if we have a shrine in our home with the people, I think I told you about my friend Greg, who has a shrine in his home, and Jesus is in the middle, and Jimmy Carter is to one side, and Bear Bryant is the other one. So Susan B. Anthony is in my shrine. She was raised Quaker, but her family moved to Rochester when she was young, and her father signed the book at the Rochester Unitarian Church, and the whole family attended there. Susan started out as a teacher and worked first. Her first activism was in the temperance movement. Now, a lot of people mock the Ladies' Temperance Society, but there was a men's temperance society too. They also mocked the Ladies' Temperance Society for different reasons. But drunkenness among men was an enormous problem in those days. An enormous problem. You you can read that per capita consumption of alcohol was about 7 gallons a person per year. 7 gallons a person. And you keep in mind that even though women were counted in that per person statistic, they mostly didn't drink. So that is an enormous amount of alcohol, and you see the Dickensian drawings of young children going into the bar to try to fetch daddy out of the bar, and daddy is stumbling drunk. And there was a lot of violence against children and a lot of violence against women, and a lot of unemployment and terrible poverty that was exacerbated by this alcohol consumption. And so a lot of people felt that if they could only get people to drink less or not at all, that a lot of society's ills would be cured. By the way, there was prohibition, as you know, in the 20s, and alcohol consumption did go way down. It is only now back up to about 7 gallons a person a year, but women drink now too. I think most children still don't. So Susan B. was born in 1820. The B stands for Brownell, but she didn't like that, and so she just used B. And her dad was one of the elements in her life that allowed her to be so strong. He believed in education for his daughters. He believed in her. He loved her. He thought she was fabulous. His name was Daniel Anthony. So she had the experience growing up of what a good man could do for a family, because her daddy was a good man. They were a Quaker family, and they believed that men and women could speak equally well and lead equally well, and women helped run the meetings, and they had a say in all the decisions. So Susan B. went to school, and she began to help teach after the school teacher in the town school refused to teach her long division. She wanted to know it. The school teacher said, "You don't need to know it. You need enough reading to read your Bible and enough math to count your egg money. And you don't need long division for that." So she began to teach her own self. When she was 20, she took over the teaching job from the fellow who had been right before her. He had been paid $10 a week. She got paid $2.50. When she was 25 is when her family moved to Rochester and joined the Rochester Church. And I want to tell you, when you come to a Unitarian church and you begin to mix with the people, you meet people who change your life. And she met folks at the Rochester Church who were abolitionists. And the Rochester Unitarian Church was a hotbed of abolitionist activity. Her family invited the abolitionists over, and they would have snacks and coffee, and Frederick Douglass would speak, and they decided that they were going to spend most of their energy on abolition. And so she began to speak at the meetings on abolition. She spoke at teachers' conventions, arguing that boys and girls alike should be taught. She said there was not much difference in their brains. The doctors at the time were teaching that women's bodies had only a certain amount of energy, and that whatever went to your brain did not go to the rest of your body. And so if you worked your brain too hard, you would not be able to have children. And they said, "You want to teach women long division? What next? You're going to teach your dog?" What I want you to know is that the voices of the religious right have been saying the same stupid things forever. What next? Your dog is something that they have used over and over and over again. Now they're using it about marriage equality. What, are you going to marry your cows? Yeah. You can say the last time that was funny was in 1873. As with all social activism, there was a division among the activists. Are you surprised? And the division said, on one side, don't scare folks off by asking for too much all at once. And on the other side, it was, we need liberation now. I don't care if I scare folks. I want a revolution. In every socially active movement, there are both of these points of view. I have seen churches split. I have seen peace groups have fights over this split. And Susan B., she was on this side, the revolutionary side. And she said, shall I tell a man whose house is on fire to get his children out moderately? Shall I tell a woman whose baby has fallen into the river to scoop it out moderately? No, our house is on fire. Our baby's in the river. We need to take it now. She still wasn't as radical as some folks. In 1848, she was 28 years old. They had the first women's rights convention in Seneca Falls, New York. She didn't go. Local media said that it was a hen convention attended by cranks, hermaphrodites, and atheists. Susan was a bit shocked to find out that all her abolitionist friends also supported women's rights. She was very happy to know. They talked about the brilliant Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was also working in the abolition movement. Her parents and she became friends with Amelia Bloomer, who campaigned for more comfortable dress for women, wearing bloomers or dressing like a man, which is what the clergy said, and said she was devilish. Devilish. I'm wondering if it is a worthy goal by the end of your life to be called devilish by the religious right. Let me know if you think I should go for it. Uh-oh. I'd say that's a mandate. So, as I said, there was a men's temperance union, and Susan was in the women's temperance auxiliary. They did go to that convention, the big temperance convention, and when she got up to speak, the men were horrified and said women should not speak. The sisters, they said, are here to listen and learn, not to speak. Susan walked out of the room, followed by several other women, and they went down the street, got another hall, and spoke to each other. The place was cold, it was badly lit, the stovepipe broke in the middle of her speech, and yet the people's souls were satisfied. She and Elizabeth Cady Stanton met and instantly loved each other. Elizabeth Cady Stanton's husband, Henry, said, "You stir up Susan and she stirs up the world." Their partnership lasted their whole lives, over 50 years. Susan would watch Elizabeth's children as she wrote her speeches. Susan never did have children or marry, so Elizabeth was somewhat slowed down by having a family, household, husband, children. But Susan had a lot more freedom of her time and didn't have the responsibilities. So with the support of her family, she traveled all over the place, over rutted roads, in carriages, in the snow. she pushed herself hard. At the next temperance convention, they asked to speak. Clergymen stood up, yawn, and said that they would not be allowed and that it was devilish. And they decided this time not to leave. They kept speaking. One delegate shouted that they were not women. They were some odd hybrid, half woman, half man. Otherwise, why would they be acting like this? Another man said they had no business disrupting temperance rallies with this side issue of women's rights, this dreadful doctrines of divorce and atheism. And Anthony had a petition with 10,000 signatures that she had gathered, and she tried to bring it to the front, but they closed around the women and bodily threw them out. Newspapers would attack her as she traveled and spoke. They called her repulsive and ugly and said that if a man had had an interest in her, she wouldn't feel the need to do all this. They said she must have been neglected by men and therefore she was jealous and that she harbored a deep hatred of men. Somehow asking for women's rights meant that you hated men? That is a logical leap. But they made it. She voted in an election in the 1870s because she was not allowed to vote. She just wanted it now. So she went and voted, and she got thrown into jail, and she was tried, and she was convicted, and they didn't want her to say anything at her sentencing. Do you think she said something? Yes, she did. And part of it was, I will not pay 1 penny of your unjust fine. I agree with the old revolutionary maxim that disobedience to tyranny is obedience to God. Many of the suffragists working for women's right to vote were embarrassed by Susan B. and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and they felt that the women's Bible had really gone too far, and when they said that the Trinity was probably Father, Mother, Son, as that was a more natural family, they shunned Elizabeth and Susan. So she didn't live to see women get the vote in 1920. But she said, failure is impossible. I've been struggling all week with what she meant. I don't know. It certainly seems that failure was possible for her. And yet, I think she must have trusted, as Theodore Parker said, the arc of the universe bends toward justice. She must have trusted that eventually, if you work hard enough, it'll happen. It doesn't always. But if you're working for something just, it almost always does. We move toward justice if we're in a society that values justice. But even the people who are working against us think that they're working for justice. Failure is impossible. What does it mean? I think it is just a call to a long, slow effort in the same direction. Things do not happen fast, although for them to happen at all, we need the people who say they're going to happen fast. And we need the people who are embarrassed by the radicals, because the people in power will talk to these people, the ones who say you should work from within the system. Both of them are right. And every movement has both. But for the movement to go ahead, the powers that be have to be scared of these people so that they will be motivated to talk to these people. Without these people, they'll be scared of these people. See what I'm saying? You always need Malcolm X for Martin Luther King to look reasonable to the powers that be. So here's what I've learned about social change from looking at Susan B. Number 1, trust yourself. If something seems to you to be wrong, and if it seems to a good friend of yours or two also that it's wrong, then it's probably wrong. 2, get mad. Anger is a good fuel for action. Aristotle said, try to get mad at the right person or the right institution at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. Check, 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 check. Go for it. 2, work to change things and expect it to be a long, slow effort in the same direction. Don't just complain, because kvetching in the hall never did change anything. You have to work to change things. And the people in power will never just say, you know what, I'm tired of all this power. I think I'll give some of it to you. Never happens. 3, 4, lean on a friend. Have a team around you. Have people who support you. Have people who believe in you. You can't do it by yourself. Number 5, know how things work. And here's how things work. Number 1, they ignore you at first. Number 2, they ridicule you next. They say you're ugly and that you hate things you don't hate and that you're jealous and whatever. Just go, oh yeah, there it is. There it is. Then they fight you. And then they agree. And later, they say they're with you all along. Keep fighting.